Good afternoon or evening, everybody. Welcome back to another weather forecast by Adrian's Weather Forecast, and we have a significant upload here and a very, very important upload on the Western Pacific. For those who have been watching my channel for a while, when I talk about the Western Pacific, you know it's serious here. I only really talk about the Western Pacific and the Indian Ocean, really, and even the Eastern Pacific only when there's really a significant storm. I typically talk about the Atlantic a lot more than any other region than the EPAC, but I rarely talk about the Western Pacific, maybe once or twice a year. So when I talk about the Western Pacific, there is something very major. It's exactly what we are seeing right now. Extreme major. Just extreme typhoon Chanthu now at still another wave of it staying as a category 5 here typhoon ripping through the northern islands there of the Philippines, as well heading for areas next as Taiwan. So really keep a very close eye on this monster system. I do believe the Joint Typhoon Weather Center does only have this at 160 miles an hour or 140 knots, but I do believe this is rather way stronger than 160 miles an hour, and I can honestly see it being 170 or 175. And this is an absolute monster system right now. You see very good developing and just shrinking eye right there as a result of the just increasing amount of overall convection burst in this strong, really, really intense eye wall. Of course, thankfully, the steering pattern did allow this to avoid the let's take that out of the way. The main island there of the Philippines here. Thankfully, however, it's going to go through these small islands. So anyone that lives in these islands is most likely going to definitely experience historic conditions here. I mean, this is going to be unsurvivable with extreme storms. There's extreme wave heights of over 60 feet. I mean, this is going to be absolutely unsurvivable. I mean, I don't even want to imagine the storm surge totals. Obviously, we don't really have anywhere that gives us storm surge totals. Only the National Hurricane Center gives it towards um, U.S. territories. But again, we do not have any storm surge totals. But I wouldn't doubt if it's over 20 to 25 feet of storm surge across this region here. This is an absolutely massive storm here with a developing and just overall decent eye. Obviously, the eye has continued to shrink within the past few hours as the convection bursts are really, really just overall taking over. So we're starting to see a lot of areas of just negative convection there. We're going to look at Dovrak very soon after this satellite imagery or this overall IR. But obviously now it's going to start heading for a portion near Taiwan. Most likely will avoid a big landfall for Taiwan. But again, with this rather large and symmetrical eye wall, we're definitely going to be seeing some overall significant effects for much of these areas within the vicinity or the general area of this track. Let's not going to look here at visible here. We can actually get I hate how sometimes if I'm recording, it just does not let me click anywhere. So I wonder if I just, okay, I'm going to have to get it after the video. So obviously, since it is now nighttime across that general vicinity, what is it around? I'm trying to think. I think they're what, like maybe I have no idea how far ahead Indonesia, it's not Indonesia, sorry, the Philippines are, but I think I know what, I think China's 12 hours, so I think this is probably like maybe around 5, 6 in the morning here. So obviously really early in the morning, so we're gonna start getting overall satellite very soon. But there you see the really strong eye wall there with the extreme moisture bubble. Obviously, there's really not much dry air really. There's a little bit drier up here to the northwest, but other than that, has a very, very favorable and overall conducive environment for at least the next 24 hours. Again, this is the third time of it getting to a Category 5 status, so this is obviously a very significant storm here, and it's going to have rather conducive environment until it gets closer to Taiwan. It will start gradually weakening. But like I just said, I think the Joint Typhoon Weather Center is obviously under forecasting this. Really, I do think it's going to be. I do obviously think this is more than 160. I wouldn't doubt if it's 160 or 165. Oh, sorry, 165 or 170 or 175. I would not doubt if it's even an extra 15 mile an hour stronger than what they have it as now. Just based on this system, it looks like it's going through an eye wall replacement cycle. So we will see whether this eye continues to regenerate. We're seeing obviously extreme heat across this eye, very dry conditions. So it's obviously showing we are seeing an overall very well defined cleared eye. So here's the overall look at this overall information we do have from Chanthu. So obviously this is currently at this point as a joint typhoon weather center. This is obviously located at 18.7 degrees north and 122 8 degrees east. And obviously, this is having a wind speed at 140 knots, which is 160 miles an hour. So you can see the overall gradual development of the storm. It's been a Category 3 already 3 times. So obviously, the storm has continued to just stay very consistent with its overall strength. Obviously, it was kind of directly heading for the Philippines, and then we had that overall ridging pattern keeping it away from the Philippines. So it's just sparing, but obviously there's going to be a few areas of land and land mass and islands between the Philippines and Taiwan, likely to just skin the coast of Taiwan as a major typhoon still at a Category 3, and they're going to get closer to Shanghai and the South Gulf of China. So there you have 140 knots and 130 knots. Then it gradually weakens. It just gradually weakens. So thankfully, it's going to only be around 110, 200 knots as it skins Taiwan. But obviously, it's going to be seeing rather overall extreme conditions and obviously very dangerous conditions. Again, Taiwan is rather mountainous. So with that amount of rain, we're going to be seeing in a very short time period. Likely be seeing some significant flooding as well. Even watching out for some landslides. So that's what we have basically with that. Let's now get a look here as what we're seeing shear wise. Again, let's go back here for a second here. If we go back to what we're looking at, so let's actually look at the shear. So again, there's really little shear in this general area. We're seeing very favorable shear values across this whole path. So although really strong storms like this can withstand a ton of shear, like 40 plus knots, there's really little shear to no shear whatsoever, especially not only in the lower levels, but all the way to the upper levels as well. So overall, this storm is definitely going to continue to stay rather strong considering its overall great conditions. But that's really what we're looking at overall. So really great conditions for this storm ahead. So now this is a look overall at the advanced Dovrak technique here, ADT, and basically what they have this as 908 millibars or 908.1 and 152 knots. So I believe 152 knots is basically around 175-ish, maybe 170 miles an hour around that general area. So I think I could very well agree with what Dovrak is showing here. Look at the overall center temp, negative 14.4 degrees Celsius. That's a really warm eye. Look at the overall cloud region temp getting numbers as low as negative 77.3 degrees Celsius. So overall seeing extreme amount of convection initiation going on within this system there, as well as seeing some lightning. And then of course seeing really warm temperatures within the eye of 14.4 degrees Celsius. But obviously this storm is quite intense here. It's going to continue to stay rather intense. But again, Dovrak is supporting this to be not only a Category 5, but a lot stronger than what the Joint Typhoon Weather Center is showing as well. So here's the overall Joint Typhoon Weather Center forecast map. So obviously the initial forecast is it's at 140 knots here. I mean, look at that, 55-foot waves of maximum significant waves. I mean, we're getting extremely significant waves, of course, within this system. But they actually do have gusts up to 190 knots, according to this here. So that's obviously quite significant. But obviously, this is going to gradually start to weaken here. So they have it actually 155 knots here as of the 18th. So it looks like they actually increased their peak forecast to now 155 knots. I could have swore they had it at 140 knots, at least as of what I saw now. So it looks like they're definitely as well continuing its upward trend in its strengthening forecast. So overall, keeping a very close eye on this storm here. But there you see likely again heading toward the areas of the far northern Philippine Islands there between Taiwan and that general vicinity. Obviously likely just to skin Taiwan and then get very close to Shanghai, which is obviously within the overall Bay of China. And moving, obviously this will move through the South China Sea, and then it's going to start turning a little bit further northeastward as a result of a high pressure further up near Beijing. So that's exactly where we're seeing kind of the overall track forecast. And that's going to start heading for areas near Japan. So overall, watching just for a lot of general areas in the Western Pacific. Let's now get a look here with the overall H4 watts a half. So they have it getting as of now the next 3 hours 927 millibars, then getting to as low as 924, and then gradually weakening here. Actually taking it a little bit further east compared to Taiwan, compared to the Joint Weather Typhoon Center forecast here. They're getting up to 943 millibars. Still really strong storm. So I'm going to watch out for some significant flooding across much of Taiwan as well watching out for some significant flooding across eastern China there, just within the Shanghai vicinity. And then gonna start bringing some more rain even closer to Shanghai. But overall, it's gonna start weakening. Basically, I'd say it's gonna start going on to significant weakening trend within the next 24 hours or so. Thankfully, as it gets closer to Taiwan, but again, areas kind of towards northern Philippines just got absolutely hammered by the system. This just reminds me of kind of Haiyan. Obviously, a lot of people remember that typhoon as well. Even reminds me a little bit of Gani, which we can't really compare this to Gani, but still reminds me of somewhat of Gani a little bit. So here's like the overall look of the H wharf. They have it getting up to 137 knots right now, which is obviously just slightly weaker than what the joint weather typhoon wants to have. And they actually get it up to 150 knots. So actually, that's the past here. I'm looking at the past. So they have it here again at 137 knots, and then gradually weakening to 118 knots, 128 knots, 100, and I'm not sure why this is not loading here. It's just stuck at 21 hours right now for some reason, so I'm not sure why the H wharf is stuck. Hopefully it kind of loads if it wants to load here. It is like the H wharf just does not want to load right now. So again, the H wharf, you can kind of see the overall gist of it. They're kind of having dead on within these little islands right here. Gonna get absolutely hammered by this storm. It's gonna be definitely unsurvivable for all of those islands, those small islands there ahead of Chanthu. So again, here's the overall pressure on the H wharf. So there you see getting to 921.9 millibars, 925, and then gradually getting it weakening as it goes and skins portions of Taiwan, going further up the South China Sea, and at this point kind of just stalling, just completely stalling. I'm not sure why it just completely stalls, but just sits off the coast of China. And that were to happen, we're talking about extremely significant flooding here. Let's look at the overall wind speeds here in miles an hour so we can get a better idea since we're looking at knots. So let's get a look here at miles an hour. So let's go all the way to what we're looking at right now. So they want to have it here at 157 millibars, or 157, not millibars. Oh my god, if that was 157 millibars, I don't know. I don't even know what the actual speed would be. So this is 900 or 157 miles an hour. So then obviously 154. You can just see the overall extreme winds. I mean, just imagine living those islands there during this system. Obviously, it's not going to bring in really extreme winds for Taiwan. We may see some significant gusts up to maybe 50 across the actual coast, but it's going to obviously become more of an annular storm as it skins the overall coast. And then after that, it's not going to be too big of a threat. We still may see some strong winds across the east coast of China and the east coast of Taiwan. But other than that, it shouldn't be too crazy. Let's now get a look here at the overall precipitation, though, as we kind of see really where the worst of the rain is going to be, especially as it stalls across China. So the extremely significant rain there for Taiwan as we go into tomorrow, as well as significant rain is going to continue throughout much of into Monday and Tuesday of next week across China. So this is still going to be on our mind and basically forecasting it for a little bit, for a good bit there. So here's then look at the overall wave height. And I believe Joint Weather Typhoon Center did mention something about max wave height being 55 feet, but this actually has it getting to maybe 40-foot waves. But still going to be seeing some extremely large waves across the islands there of the Philippines. You can see absolutely, I mean at least the islands between the Philippines and Taiwan is absolutely clobbered within that purple color. So I mean, again, if anyone is on those islands right now, it's going to be unsurvivable. We have all that with the storm surge plus the rain totals. I mean, even going to be seeing some significant wave heights into the overall Taiwan area because the strong counterclockwise flow is going to bring those strong choppy waters. So we actually may get up to 20-foot waves near Taiwan actually. So could watch out for still some significant storm surge for Taiwan. And at this point, we may see even some choppy waters and even some dangerous rip currents across portions of the Korea Peninsula, Japan, and overall areas there within the China Bay. So even watching out for some long-term effects here. Last but not least, let's jump into the Atlantic for a little bit here. Obviously, I said I love the Atlantic, so I'm going to throw it in somehow. So here's Larry at 80 miles an hour. Going to start heading for Newfoundland quite soon across southeast Canada. We do have hurricane warnings in effect for Newfoundland, Canada. I remember the last time we've actually had warnings up there. I don't remember if we had warnings up there for, I think it was Paula or Teddy. I don't know. It's Epsilon, Teddy, and Paula that all just get me confused. So actually, we do have an invest here onto the Central America vicinity. We do have a 40% for the next 48 hours and a 70% for the next 5 days. So watching out for maybe letter N soon here The northern part of the tropical wave is producing disorganized showers within an area of trough. Obviously, it's kind of part of a tropical wave. So we do have a trough center across the axis. So this system is forecasted to move into the Bay of Campeche and merge with a pre-existing surface trough by Sunday. Environmental conditions are expected to be conducive to support gradual development thereafter, and a tropical depression is likely to form on Sunday or Monday before the system moves onshore along the western Gulf of Mexico. So we're gonna watch out whether there is a chance this could become a tropical storm. But really watching out this tropical wave here off Africa. This one looks like a very, very interesting here with overall great conditions ahead of it. This is a 50% for the next 48 hours and a 70% for the next 5 days. A strong tropical wave located off West Africa is producing disorganized showers and thunderstorms. This wave will move off the coast by this evening, and gradual development is expected thereafter. A tropical depression is likely to form late this weekend, so this could very well form first before the actual Central American one, because it's going to be over land for a little bit. A tropical depression is likely to form this weekend or early next week as the system moves westward over the far eastern Atlantic near the Cabo Verde Islands. Interest in the Cabo Verde Islands should monitor the progress system. So gonna really watch out maybe for a Larry 2.0 where we maybe see an out to sea storm, because obviously we have some big concerns if the index was down here aiming directly for this vicinity, but also with the ridging pattern we're seeing the overall Tut, I believe, is right here, something like that. It's gonna probably steer up at the sea once again. So that's a good thing as well. But the tropics are becoming quite interesting in the Atlantic. Malls aren't showing too much here with these two invests or these two disturbances. Sorry. So obviously this is basically at a lower pressure. The tropical wave at 1,009 millibars off Africa. And you can see a little bit of a spin there, a little bit of vorticity, and overall slight clockwise or a slight counterclockwise flow with this system. Typically, we see a lot of areas of vorticity within tropical waves, which is why I see multiple embeds sometimes within tropical waves. But it does not look like anything interesting, or at least any malls are picking up on it. I know a few ensembles are picking up on it, but I'm gonna probably talk about that more tomorrow, because obviously this video is specifically designed for the Western Pacific, but I want to throw in the Atlantic a little bit in this. So I'm not gonna go in great detail. Again, the overall thing you want to take out of this right now, this part of the video, is that there's not too much mall support. There's a little bit there. The CMC wants a little bit something there. I mean, the CMC as well wants that one, the Bay of Campeche, getting down to 1,007 millibars. So overall, I'm gonna watch out the chance for maybe a tropical depression, maybe even a tropical storm. And here's the overall wind pattern and the steering pattern. So obviously, it would be interesting that we do most likely see an out to sea storm. So there you see a really strong trough down there, and then a strong ridge up here. So as the storm coming off Africa continues to move a little bit. Actually, I think this is the wrong storm. Yeah, I think that's the wrong storm. Yep, that's definitely the wrong date. So let's go to the actual real date. So here's the actual low pressure itself. I think I completely lost the low pressure. I think it goes like what up here. Yeah, I think I completely lost the low pressure. So let's go back to it. Actually, I lost low pressure because it does not really pop up on the shear because it's just a broad low. Let's go back here, see what they have. So let's move my screen a little bit down that way. So yeah, I mean, this just dies off. This low pressure just dies off there into the far distance. So there's September 14th. Actually, I think we were looking at the right one the whole time. Yeah, we were. So there's the actual low pressure, and then it just kind of gets scooped up there by the strong overall weak or trade winds, kind of pushing it kind of towards the northwestward region. And then it kind of just dies within this overall ridge. If this were to be a very, very, very strong ridge or a very strong storm, we'd most likely kind of see this going a little bit further this way, but since it's so weak, it's getting picked up by the trade winds, kind of just killing it. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys later.